Hi there. I have a journal for you. This one came on a Jaguar day for Jaguar, and it's from, I've got 0025 instead of 1125. Have to fix that. It's the first of that day. And I have a link for you to a David Wilcock, about a 2-hour video, the source field investigations full video. I guess we'll get into it here and see why I put that there. Hi folks, I'm basically just checking in with this journal. Can't say yet that I have a grip on an understanding of why it is that I'm not feeling called as before to write them so often. If you've been with me long though, you know how it is that I wake up in a new world every day. Being this open is just like that, I guess. I don't know though. There's precious little that I know. It's important to define your terms if you're using language, especially the I. When most people speak, their I refers to what I call the body-mind avatar, their 3D presence. That's not what I mean by the word, so right off you can see the potential for misunderstandings. Be in heart. We go through life misunderstanding almost everything, yet quite convinced that we do understand things. It's very strange. Are you in heart? If you want to make sense of this, it would be a good idea to listen from there. I went through all sorts of trick type things to train the self to be and stay heart-centered. Then I got pretty good at it, so that leveled off. At some point I looked up and realized I had dropped all and any sort of procedures from my life, including those sorts of trick things and even meditations. Of course, now that my 12D friends are calling me back to meditate, I guess that will change. It wasn't something I decided to do consciously. It just sort of happened while I was following intuition and heart. I'm sure you can relate to this, as I've heard many commenting on how their preferences have changed on them without any decision on their part. Even our diets are changing. The same things don't always taste good anymore. For me, this seems to go well with the understanding that our DNA is in process of changing. It would surely at some point have some visible, even measurable effects. That's if it is to be the huge change that so many are hoping for and expecting. I think it will be. Of course, maybe not quite as much as some are expecting. Much of what science currently believes will have to be changing too. Evolution, just like climate change, is rather more sudden than what science theorizes. It doesn't happen gradually over millions and billions of years. Those changes happen too, but there are drastic changes that come on quickly as well. Most of you have watched clips taken from David Wilcock's The Source Field Investigations presentation. I hadn't seen this more complete one. At almost 2 hours, I enjoyed watching it. I hope you will too. He's off on some things, and he's a bit gullible, a bit vulnerable, but you know what? That's from being open, my friends. Everything has its ups and its downs. I didn't find much to argue with in this presentation. Now, shifting gears, as a people, my friends, we worry too much. Have you noticed? This great change is coming. However it will manifest, it's just not up to us. Our DNA too is changing, also without our conscious participation. I mean, after all, you don't consciously tell your heart to beat, heaven forbid. These changes are simply happening. All we need do is be open, is to cooperate, is to relax. I'd like us to let go of the worry. Worry is just another label for fear, which is the one vibration that turns many of our magical abilities off. To fear is to choose to cut oneself off from Source. Now, you can't really do that since you are actually Source, but you can pretend to, and that's what fear generates, the pretense. Not so hot. It's a choice many will make, but I'm asking those of you, those of us who are more conscious, to be self-aware about this. Catch any worry when it arises and just stare it down. Look at it. The more confident you are in your own divine nature, the more power you have at your disposal to bring change. To fear and to worry is to give your power away. Have you considered it like that? Perhaps that will help you to weed it out. Fear in any guise is pure poison. Underneath every anger is fear. That was an ad-lib. But the journal says, please know that anger is another disguise for fear. When you can step back just a few steps from the anger and self-observe, you will see this. Don't trust me. Prove it to yourself. Only then will you really own it. In the new day dawning, our knowings, our knowledge and understanding will be deep. They will be based on our own direct experience too, not just something we were told, taught, or we discovered on the internet. Mental knowings will be the old way. Shallow, simply not good enough. The mind is a tool meant for other things. Deep knowings are experiential, and things of heart, the very best place for such experience. We are all shifting. I guess we all become more aware of it. Write things down. When special things happen, even serendipities or special intuitions that prove out, jot it down. We are the way showers, and we are leaving tracks in the sand. I hope it's not sand. Those tracks disappear. We are leaving footsteps for those who follow to guide them on. We don't know how these things will fall into those hands, but it doesn't matter. Not one bit. That's not the point, and that's to be mind-centric and leave the now to boot. Anchor your own knowing that you are divine. Do what it takes to prove this to yourself. Find those books and videos that talk to you that will point you this way. You know much already. Sure you do. But do you give the self credit for it? Maybe not. Friends, we've got to come into a real love relationship with the self. To love and deeply respect the divine being that you are. You deserve this. Don't let the mind minimize you in any way. Be alert, for minds in general are very good at that. It's how they were programmed. Well, we're changing that programming. We are that powerful, and far more so. But what if we have all this great power, yet never acknowledge it, never own it? What good does it do? Well, sure, it does some good just because it's your higher reality. And you're here on the planet, which means you radiate that. So, just by your very being, the planet and all life is blessed just because you're here. You always do that, even while you sleep. It's built into the nature of things. So yes, even just your presence on Earth is your service. Yet there is so very much more we could all tap into, if only we would. This, the way I see it, is to cooperate with the oncoming great shift. This is to choose to ride the wave instead of just being carried along in the current. And it's a choice we can all make. Is this making sense for you? Remember, these journals talk as much to me as to anyone, obviously. I mean, come on. I'm not putting myself above the lowliest one on the planet. Not lower, not higher than the highest one either. That sort of thinking is very 3D, hierarchical. I don't find that sort of hierarchy in the higher dimensions. We're all one up there. You're just another me. I'm just another you. The separation is only a seeming, a part of the play. And I'll step out for a second and say, I know that there are beings being channeled by some of us that talk of things being very hierarchical. George Kavasilis is a good one to illustrate that. That's one of the catchphrases to me. Anything that's got a hierarchy, to me, is not true higher consciousness. Not what I've experienced. I've experienced the oneness. So if they're inventing a hierarchy, that's a power play thing. And that's more game playing. I think we have enough game playing on planet Earth that we can be done with that. We're all equal, my friends. We're all different facets in the same gem. Nobody is better than anybody else, or higher, or any of that. Okay, back to the journal. When you go into heart and spend some time there, you'll discover that there's no judgment at all inside. Nothing but unconditional love in which judgment just doesn't happen. Now, discernment happens. That's tied in with intuition, and it's an excellent thing. Judgment is so last century, though. It's time to ditch it. When you're ready, that is. Remember, don't believe me. Work it out for yourself. I think I've finally got it about all these light workers doing their thing, making their videos, and why not one of them, including me, seem to have the whole truth. We didn't set this play up that way. Very intentionally, we didn't. Instead, we're very aware that we each came in with our own special piece of the puzzle. So we give what we have. No one perspective is capable of seeing it all, so they don't. It's in the coming together, the new unity we can see dawning if we just look away from the television long enough. So, no matter how small your piece may seem to you, be sure to offer it up. Your piece is just as necessary as the rest. It's like a puzzle. No one piece is better than another. The corners might think they're pretty hot, but it's just their piece. It's just their angle, their perspective. The truth comes together as we peruse all of the offerings, or the ones that we're called to. Different pieces stand out to each one as we listen to someone speak. Different lines, thoughts, ideas, intuitions come to us. Then, as we each put our own particular truth puzzle together, we gather up our favorite parts from each one we listen to, from those who we consider worthy, the other light beings. It will be a while before the sheeple and sleeple discover their piece, so they're maybe not yet ready for this. That's fine, though. even how it's meant to be. After all, are we not the way showers? I say, if you're reading or listening here, then yes, we are. Now, back to the worry that so many of us carry around. It's both massively uncomfortable, not to mention pollution in the mass consciousness. Perhaps it takes looking at things from a different perspective to realize how truly worthless worry is. I don't know precisely what will help you to master that. It came for me just in my overall trek out of head into heart. Well, as I look back, it wasn't quite that easy. I spent a year or two locked in a tussle with mind over who gets to rule the roost. Mind had always been in charge. It knew nothing else. It was frightened to even contemplate anything else. Yet I gave mind no option. I was persistent, determined that heart was to be in charge. That was a time of intense self-observation. It had to be, for I learned how resourceful and just how tricky mind could be, and how resistant to giving up the reins of control. What I saw happen personally is that mind also watched what was going on. As it saw some rather good outcomes arise out of my following intuition or heart, it began to reconsider. It was still resistant, sure, but now it was at least a little more open. If I knew back then what I do now, I would have played it a bit differently. I played it out as a conflict, one I was determined to win, as head against heart. That may be why it took so long. If I had to do it over, I'd take a different tack, the one I use now, which is based on cooperation and more respect for mind. These days, I talk to my mind. I tell it what I want. I tell it what I don't want. I also explain to it how my proposed change that I'm doing will benefit us both, the mind and I. Remember, you're not separate from mind, at least in the 3D play. Wait a minute. The line says, remember, you are separate from mind, at least in the 3D play. You can look at it either way, but for what I'm sharing here, you are separate from the mind. That's how you can talk to it. Sure, it's a part of the play. Sure, it's an illusion, but it works. In the higher reality, of course, we're all one. That's the other side of every coin. This sense of cooperation is a wonderful thing. It takes it right up out of duality and into higher frequencies. We see how it's a win-win. Furthermore, I talk to my body too. I tell it the same things about proposed changes, whether change to diet or supplements or whatever. Now, I'm not saying I'm perfect at this, but we've got to cut our bodies and minds loads of slack. They're bearing the major burden here, doing a lot of the work. Considering the major crunch they're in too as we move through the great shift, which is happening every day. Internal cooperation. Is it a new idea for you? Not used to thinking of yourself as a committee, are you? It was for me. I don't know how it developed either. It just did. I found myself doing this. But meanwhile, if I can save you from anything I went through that wasn't the best way, that's great. As we unify with other light beings, with Mother Earth, with the star beings and all the rest, all of this begins at home with the self. Unify with yourself cooperatively. The changes we make within are the ones we'll begin to see reflected out there in the world. It just works that way. Every little thing you think, do, and say has more importance than you tend to give it. The same here. Because our avatars don't yet see the beautiful fractal connection we all have, they operate under the delusion that we're truly separate when we're not. We're all joined at the hip, joint reflections of the one. Entangled, that was the word I was forgetting. This journal may go on a bit, for I've something else to share. Most of you know that I don't believe in a major shift happening in one day, like 12/21. But consider this. We've been in the process of making this shift for decades now. And time is doing nothing but ramping it up, intensifying it. Well, that being the case, as things change faster and faster, then there will ultimately be one moment in which the final threshold to the next levels is crossed. So in a way, that could be seen as the change in one day, even though without the decades of prior changes, such a thing could not happen. So that's the sort of instant shift I do believe in. Now, consider further. Mother Earth is coming along. So, if you're one of those expecting to leave the planet behind, you may want to reconsider. Maybe ask your spiritual guides about that. Do the internal research. That being the case, when we wake up the next day, things may look very much the same. The planet, the plants, the animals, and all having come along for the journey. Patricia Corey says the whole solar system is going through the astral cords of the sun up into the next higher level. I think they say what'll be left behind is a different sort of a sun, a dwarf or something. If you're still in sleeple mode and not self-aware, and you wake up the next day, then what would be your tendency in that event? Would it not be to create, based on your past, the same thing? To create what you expect? Though your creative power was juiced up, maybe 10 or 100 or 1,000-fold, you wouldn't necessarily know that right away. So you'd do like before, and you would get just what you expected, just like before. This may be a really critical time, my friends, crossing this last threshold. Do consider, if you're a worrier now, you'll carry that on, and that won't be good, since with your juiced up creative power, you'll magnetize what you fear, what you worry about that much faster. Again, without fully realizing it. If you indulge in anger now, you will then only consider what the power of a little g God behind that anger will do. You may do some direct harm. You have the power to do that. Is that what you want? The picture is the same or similar if you indulge in a lot of fear energy now. You will then. Only what you fear will come upon you 10 or 100 or 1,000,000 times quicker, as in instantly. The instant precipitation of things may just be what alerts you to the change. So it may be beneficial after all. How could I know? But do consider there is a better way to go. That way would be to see, to address and to deal with those tendencies in your now. You can deal with them all in a very simple way too, just by seeing what they have in common, which is that they all come from the mind. You can see that by moving into heart, you can put them all in the passenger seat, leave them behind, so to speak. Now sure, they will crop up now and then as you're making the change. All that's required is to be self-observant and to notice them. The instant you notice, you make a swift shift back into your heart. You learn to ignore mind when it isn't functioning the way you desire, in cooperation with heart. You simply look away from it and put your focus back where you want it to be, in heart. That much is simpler than it sounds. You have even now the power of that little G God to make this particular shift, if it's what you want. Things are much different when perceived from within. There is no judgment, no right or wrong, no good or bad. You begin to see the overall beauty in simply everything, and how it's all just based on choice. My suggestion is not to try to understand this with mind. It won't happen. Whatever understanding you and mind come up with will be a 3D one, not the transcendent one you desire, not something that will work for you in 5D. Mind has to be gently led into this transcendence thing. It will go kicking and screaming for a while, but you can shorten that time with respect and goodwill toward mind, with understanding and compassion, unlike how I made that same track. We want those who follow to stand on our shoulders, to take advantage of the much better view they have there. So share your failures too, not just your successes. Do it on faith until you realize one day there's no such thing as a failure. Share it all. You are important. Make friends with that. We're all programmed to look down on the self, to minimize it. Those are weeds that require pulling from your belief garden, or they'll keep getting in your way as you want to move on. I hope many, as they self-observe, will become aware of just how easy this really is, and just how powerful they really are. It must be believed in, my friends, to make good use of it, to make full use of it. This is where the mental understandings fade and fail. They don't stand up to the test. It really takes owning what you do believe in to make it stick through whatever trials come along. Notice how it is always only mind doing the worrying, not you, not the real you. Higher self has no use for such waste of energy as worry, as fear, as anger. They make no sense to it or to heart. When you're in heart, you won't indulge those things. What people don't realize now is that when they worry and such, they are indulging in that. They do have a choice. So let us use our free will and choice wisely. Let us be alert to notice the possible change of a seemingly instantaneous great shift, so we can take advantage of that. If we choose to abandon all worry and over-concern now, then we're well on our way to being in the best possible shape to recognize those subtle changes that may be all we have to alert us to the fact that we're on the new earth. Again, I don't know that things will happen like that. This change may be far more obvious, but then maybe not. I do know several good authors, Patricia Corey for one, who tell us of just such an eventual shift. One where will be well to be on our toes and with a flexible perspective, not locked in to certain expectations. Meanwhile, as we go through what whatever is ahead, let us be true to our now. It's all we've really got, since both past and future are but mind constructs. They are not real, and they do not empower us like centering in the now does. There is literally no power in either past or future. All of our power is both heart-centered and now-centered. Namaste. Okay, as I was reading through that, I noticed something. I spoke too broadly about higher self will not indulge in worry, fear, and anger. Now, I don't believe that it will, but you can look like you're angry and not be angry. And I've had that happen to me. I was perfectly calm inside, and I was watching myself, looking as if I was gently losing my temper. I guess losing your temper isn't gentle, but I'm not talking shouting and screaming. And as I look back, I realize that that's what a higher self knew was needed to break the logjam that was in front of me. That energy was beneficial, and it was delivered in that manner because that's the energy that was required. So when you're in heart, you're just completely trusting higher self to rule the roost, to run things. Being in heart is joining up with your higher self, if that's what you want. We've got to make room too for the fact that different folks want different things. It's just not good to have expectations on people. It's much better to ditch all expectations and just let it be what it is. Remember, when we're the empty cup, we're open to whatever arises. Good day.